two toddlers, so it can get crazy. So if they come in and budge in, just be in mind and forgive me for that. So, without much further ado, I'll start off with my background. This is the outline for the conversation that we have today, and some of the lessons that I've learned, some application tips about the timeline, as well as any next steps that may be beneficial for you going forward. All right. So, how did I get to where I am? And I'll tell you a little bit more about myself because I don't know if some of you may know, some of you may not know. Um, but I grew up in Zimbabwe, and I actually left right after high school and went to Oberlin College in Ohio here in the US. And during when I was in college, I thought, oh, you know what? I really, really want to go to med school. Actually, that dream came from me when I was still at home in Zimbabwe that well when I go to the US I want to become a physician. So I kind of stuck with it and tried to make sure that I align all my courses and my journey so that I would be able to fulfill that dream. But how I chose to become a physician, I don't even know going backwards when it was, but I think it was closer to the end of high school that I became sort of becoming a physician. So during my junior year of college, that's when I applied to med school. Pretty much studied most of the preparations, and I went to Harvard, graduating in 2016. And then after that, I did general surgery intern year, and I'll probably describe a little bit later why that is important because when you're doing subspecialties here in the US for residency, you have to do an intern year, and that's what I end up doing. So, and then wait, just hold on. So I ended up doing radiology residency at the University of Pennsylvania, and I did a fellowship in nuclear medicine while in residency, which is kind of unique for the program that I was in. And right now, I just started my fellowship at MGH in Massachusetts General Hospital in the Harvard system. So I kind of circled back and came back to Boston, and I'm doing breast cancer imaging and interventions. So, there's so many specialties in medicine. It's once you become an MD, the pathways are, kind of endless to some extent. And I chose to do radiology for several reasons that I'll probably describe along the way. But to just give you a rough down of, what do I do on a day-to-day basis and why I chose my specialty. I feel so radiology is different from because some people their interactions as a patient would be you get an X-ray or a CT scan, and there's someone who takes your pictures. So those are called radiographers or technologists. My role as a physician is to interpret those images. Um, there's always this misconception that if you're a radiologist, you're the one who takes pictures, which is not the case. So we are actually specialists in letting the clinicians know what is going on with the patient, any imaging and correlating with the findings that we have. So I also like the special because it has a great work-life balance. We usually start at maybe 7:30 or 8 and finish at 5 most of the days. Unlike surgery where you start at 5:30 a.m. and sometimes go until 7 and you work 6 days a week. I just couldn't deal with that. Well, I just didn't like that kind of life since I'm also interested in other things. And I also like the intellectual curiosity that comes with radiology. You look at an image, you have to figure out what's going on. And there's such a big breadth of pathologies that you can diagnose and help the OB-GYNs or the surgeons or the internists to know what to do with their patients. So this is just a rough example of some of the images that we deal with in my specialty. On the top here, this is an MRI, and it's a sagittal MRI, and you can see this is what the brain looks like in imaging. And sometimes if there's any pathology, we'll be able to kind of tell like, oh, okay, here this is the cerebellum, this is where the pons is, and this is where the corpus callosum is. If there's anything that the signal that we're getting from that organ is amiss, then we know, oh, most likely the patient is suffering from that condition. And this is angiography. So this is usually dealt with in cardiology or interventional radiology, where they inject dyes and they can see the blood vessel. This is actually the heart, and you can see the left ascending, the LAD artery, and you can even see the circumflex and all the other pathology that you need to know. This is a CT scan that I also specialize in. So this is what lung cancer looks like. on the CT, and you can even see some emphysema. This is an ultrasound of a baby, and all I'm just trying to show you is we have all these different modalities, or we call them modalities, ways of imaging the body, and we can get a lot of information about how the body functions. That's why I like radiology. And in nuclear medicine that I mentioned that I also specialized in, we deal with functional imaging. So how the body metabolizes compounds is we take a compound that the body metabolizes and they're capable of imaging it. So this is what's called an FDG PET CT, or just the FDG PET, and we can tell the brain uses a lot of glucose, so it uses glucose that is radioactively labeled, and this is where the tumor would be. And this is the heart and some of the normal functions. So there's so much breadth in medical imaging that we're able to use and utilize in answering questions about how a patient is doing, and I find that just fascinating, and I think it's an exciting field. So how did I get to where I am? I actually applied to 6 programs when I was in school, when I was in college, and I was accepted at Harvard, Yale, Duke, and Vanderbilt. I was actually waitlisted at the Mayo Clinic. I think it's at that time that was very competitive, and they wanted to make sure that everybody who wanted to go there was serious. I was like, I don't want to send another email, but I'd already gotten acceptance at the schools that I wanted, so it ended up not being a big deal. And I was denied at UPenn, um, and this is I only applied to the MD programs. I didn't apply to MD PhD. I didn't apply to other combinations. And interestingly, I ended up going to UPenn for my residency. So one closed door doesn't mean it's always closed. And I enjoyed my experience there. So what are some of the lessons that I learned along the way? It's a marathon, but begin with the end in mind. It's if imagine I finished my high school in 2005 and now I'm still in training. It's 2021. It's a long road. I'm almost done. This is my final year, but just to bear in mind that it's a long road. And if you're in high school or just starting college, just be dedicated, because it's not going to be a one size fits all. And you're not just going to start and you say, "Oh, I'm already a physician," and kumbaya. But it's a marathon. You just have to keep on at it, not get discouraged along the way. It'll be all ups and downs and bumps and curves, but just keep on, pushing on, and things will get better. And as international students, we actually come with an advantage. We tend to have varied experiences. We have a leg up in knowing more about the international landscape. So, use that to your advantage. And when you are making friends and, getting to know more about the US healthcare system, just come with an open mind, do the best that you can, and don't shy away from your heritage. Uh, Keep on doing the things that you need to do. And above all, balance is crucial. It's very easy to get sidetracked. There's so many things that are going on in life, and if you whether you pray, pray. If you fast, fast. If you go to the mosque, go to the mosque. If you go to the synagogue, go to the synagogue. Because there's always a need, and to have balance. Even if it means like exercising, eating right, and all the other things, having good friends, emotional relationships, spiritual relationships, everything that needs to be done so that you continue to have a balance as you go in this journey. Because as I mentioned, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And then find your why. Sometimes, you know, it's difficult to come up with a decision that takes a long time, and just do it for the sake of doing it. But find your why and see, why do you want to do? Why do you want to become a physician? There's so many different pathways that you can take. You can become a physician assistant, or you can become a nurse, or you can become a pharmacist. You can become this. So just find your why and make sure that you know why, what you're doing and why you want to do it. And then mentorship is key. Sorry, guys. There's also some background noise, but I wish I could change it. So mentorship is key, and find people who support you along the way, and stay hungry. Don't give up. Just keep on at it. If you need to give up and take a different path, it's okay, but just don't quickly throw in the towel. And then another thing that I tend to get questions about from a lot of international students who I help and mentor is funding. Because it's easier. It's one, it's hard to get into med school in the beginning, and then two, as an international student, not many med schools actually look at your application, or if they do accept you, they want you to give money into an escrow account, and it's just like it's just a big mess. But I focus. The reason why I only applied to a few schools is I was dedicated to wanting to get into good schools that I knew gave funding for international students. So I knew that like the big schools like the Harvard, the Ivy Leagues, not all the Ivy League schools. Now I think most of them do, but at that time, few of them actually considered international students or gave them positions. And those that did, they would give you a need-based aid where I didn't need to get a cosigner because I came in as an F1 student. And I just didn't want to have got the hassle of having to find somebody to cosign, this huge chunk of loans. So I ended up, and when I got into Harvard, even Yale, even Vanderbilt, I think they all said that they did need a cosigner, so I could send the loans in my own name, and it was fine. And I also got a merit scholarship from Harvard. I got the need and the merit scholarship as well as some loans, which I'm almost done paying off, even while still in residency, because it wasn't too ridiculous. Although I have had some friends from other med schools who say that they graduate with like $300,000 in loans, which is just like mind-boggling. But it happens. So just it's something that you need to think about as you're going forward. So, and then I'm going to transition to talk more about how do you stand out? Because imagine you're applying with thousands and thousands of other co-applicants, and then you're an international student, and then that kind of like sub-selects into a small sector, and you want to be able to become like that guy that they say, oh, I want to pick this guy for my admission, and how do you actually stand out? And I think it's about using your advantages. So and rather than just giving you a rough down and say, oh, do this, do that, do this, do that, I'll tell you more on a personal note, like what did I do and practically. So I was very much involved when I was in college in traditional and non-traditional leadership roles. So I was the head RA in my dorm for like a couple of years, and I would be involved in organizing community service projects. So during fall term and winter term, as well as at the spring breaks, I would go to different nonprofits and then talk to them about, having people come and volunteer. And I also volunteered with a soup kitchen in my community. And in the soup kitchen, I got invited to serve on the board of directors for that organization. So that also showed, progressive dedication and leadership. And I was involved in, different clubs like the African Students Clubs and all other things. But, and during that process, I kind of created a niche that I wanted to, whatever I did, I tried to stand out in it and give it the best that I could. So it's not just a matter of breadth, but a lot of depth as well, and showing commitment in what you're doing. So by the time when I applied, there were a lot of activities that I was involved in, but I just have selected the ones that showed like a story. And this is who I am, this is where I'm coming from, and this is where I'm going. And I want to become a physician so that I can get to point X, Y, and Z. So it's all about the story, right? It's about how you market yourself. And that comes with the varied experiences that you accumulate as you go in your path to become a physician. Uh, Another thing that is important is research and academic excellence. So it goes, beyond. I don't have to reiterate that you need to have a good GPA, a great GPA. You need to, do very well in your classes, almost all the classes. And one of the things that I also encourage the people that I mentor is, don't go for the hard classes at the beginning. So no, don't just come in and say, what, I was the greatest person in my country. I was a academic ninja. I'll come and take the higher level classes and show everybody that this is the stuff that I'm made of. That's not worth it. It's really not worth it. Just come, be humble, take good classes that you do very well, gradually ease into the curriculum so that by the time when you get to the end, you have mostly A's and great grades. And because when you take a very hard class at the beginning, it can throw you off and you lose your mojo, right? You're trying to balance this one class, then the other classes start to suffer, and it just gets into a tailwind and a tailspin. So just come in, gradually, slowly, and take classes that you become progressively challenging, and just do it that way. But I digress. So it's also important to do research. When I was in college, I actually did a research class that had credit. So we could do work with the professor during the school term and get credit for doing research. So I would actually get some dedicated time towards the credit will be towards graduation. And I got to present my work at conferences. And some of them actually won an award, and that kind of helped in showing that you have intellectual curiosity and you're interested in contributing to the scientific community. So, doing research is also important, and I encourage people to be able to do it, even maybe during the summers. And during the summers, I also did research at my college. They gave us like a $3,000 stipend to do research. So I was like, sure, sign me up. And so I did that, and that was helpful. So, but it really depends. So I came from a liberal arts college, a small liberal arts college, so we didn't have as much powerhouse research. But it just shows the some initiative that you're interested in doing that. You don't have to just do research because you want to do an MD, PhD. But I did it just to get the experience. Uh, so basically, some people they tend to do their research at big institutions if they're coming from a small school, and that's okay too. There tend to be opportunities along those lines, like in the Harvard system or MIT or Yale. They tend to also recruit undergraduates as research trainees. So just look into that. And then another thing is, clinical experience. So they may want to know like why do you want to become a doctor? And getting clinical experience can be helpful. But I know, during the COVID era, a lot of places are not hiring or having opportunities for people to come and shadow them. Um, I really don't know what the solution is, but there have been other places where they accommodate for virtual shadowing, so that could be an option. So just be persistent, keep on looking. If you can't really find good experiences, it's not the end of the world. Just know what you want to do and just keep on adding. So this was my timeline. So freshman and sophomore year, I did my prerequisites and the extracurriculars. So I just kept on at it. And then during my junior year, I took my MCAT, and then made sure I had all my recommendations and personal statements ready. And then during the summer after my junior year, that's when I submitted my MCAS, which is the application service that we use for medical school. And then I did all my secondary applications. Some of them they keep on rolling, so it's a lot of work. And in terms of which schools I applied, I think I showed you what my rundown was. And now there are more and more schools are accepting international students, so don't be too limited. But I would aim for the big schools because they tend to have more funding and have global health departments that maybe looking to hire more people who are diverse. And then in my senior year, that's when I get my acceptances and my rolling. So I've helped a lot of other international students like with premier planning, coming up with the strategy and personal statements and, editing the MCAS and interview prep. So, I'm always, you have my contact email. Sometimes it depends on the situation, but I tend to also charge a fee, but that's because my time is also valuable. But other than that, I believe that, you shouldn't just go through this journey alone because a lot of Americans, they tend to have help, and may either they come in with their parent is a doctor or their brother is a doctor or their sister is a doctor. So for us as international students, sometimes you're the only person who who's in the US, and it can be overwhelming to just start on this journey. So I know because of our time, I just didn't want to go over, but I also wanted to make sure that I give time for questions. So I don't know how the moderators would prefer, but I'm available right now for taking any questions.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Doctor, for sharing your journey into medicine as well as some advice for our international applicants. So if any of you have questions, you are more than welcome to either use the raised hand function on Zoom and we can call on you so that you can ask your question and direct it to Dr. Emmanuel, or if you would prefer to use the chat, you can do that as well, and we'll be reading some questions off. So someone in the chat asks, can you give us some tips on how to cold email professors for research positions as a high school student?
Yeah, sure. So it's just make sure that it is professional. Your email is on point. you don't have any typos in your email, and if you can find somebody else who is in the field to look over your email, that would be great, because it's just a matter of showing that you're dedicated and you've crossed your T's and dotted your I's. So my recommendation is, if you're in high school and you really want to do research, that's awesome. There are many places that allow you to do that, especially at the big academic centers. They may have people who you do. One thing that you can do is you can go on the directory which you find online, and see somebody who you are interested in. And when you find that person, then go to PubMed. It should be PubMed.org, or I'm forgetting. Just type PubMed in Google, and um, you can find all the research articles that they have created, and just read a few articles by them, and know what kind of work that they do. Then you can email them saying, hey, Professor Jones, I saw you do research on mice in HIV. I don't know, whatever you want to describe. And then when you do that, then you show that you've actually dug deeper and done your research. And this applies not just to high school, even to college students who are interested in getting research experience. So in summary, make sure that your email is on point. You have someone else look at it, and then look at the research that the professor has done, and quote that research, because people like to hear them, their work being cited by people who get in touch with them. So that's kind of my main advice.
Thank you. Asin, did you have your hand up?
Yes. So, doctor, as a radiology specialist, how does a day in your life look like?
Yeah, sure. So, my day, because right now I'm still in training, but my day is really good. So most of the days will be. I'll take about last year, for instance. We started 8, uh, and then when I go in to work, I see what images that are being planned for the day, and then I make sure that I approve those images. I mean those studies. We call them studies, or exams, either CTs or MRIs or PET CTs. So I get in, and then I make sure that I know what's going on during the day, and then I approve them. If there's any question, or the clinicians want something else, then I troubleshoot that. And then once that's done, and the technologists or the radiographers do the images, then they send them to us online. And then I have so I actually have about 4 computers, or 4 different monitors. And on those monitors, I can view the images, just go into the electronic medical record and type in dictate, we use a microphone, and then we dictate whatever we're seeing using pre-made templates. And then I synthesize the information of the images, and I can tell, okay, fine, this patient's appendicitis, what should we do? Then I refer that, talk to the clinicians on the floor, the surgeons, and tell them, oh, this is what's going on with this patient. So it's a lot of sitting down, solving puzzles, looking at pictures, and then coming up with a diagnosis, and then relaying that information to the clinicians, which is what I like. You're not spending a lot of time trying to figure out how can I discharge this patient, or writing a lot of notes. It's really streamlined. And usually, sometimes we take a lunch break between 12 and 1, and then we come back and do the same thing. And around 5 o'clock, we're done, uh, which is very different from when I was training, when I did surgery, right? And in surgery, we would start at 5:30 a.m. and then you're doing work until 6 p.m. And I was like, I don't want to do this like forever. It's just miserable. And so I like the flexibility of radiology.
Awesome, thank you. So someone asks, going back to the images you showed earlier, when do you need to use an MRI or CT scan or ultrasound? Like what cases should you use so what kind of cases would you need to have in order to use these kinds of imaging techniques?
Yeah, sure. So we tend to use MRI if we want to find soft tissue details. So as you can tell, as I was telling you, this is the head. You're cutting the head this way, and you can tell a lot of information. So you want a higher definition of what's going on using MRI. As you can tell, so this is the tongue. I don't know if you can see my mouse. So this is the tongue. You wouldn't be able to see it if this is as this grainy. This is an ultrasound. So use MRI if you want to find soft tissue detail, you want to diagnose certain things like the spine or infections and things like that. And then CT scans, we use them. They are very fast. So it takes 2 to 3 minutes to just get a whole study done. So if you want a quick, result, we can tell you that this is a CT. But it also gives us a little more definition, but not as good as the MRI. So we tend to use CT if you want to diagnose like things like appendicitis, cancer in the lungs, and a lot of other pathologies. But at the same time, the unfortunate thing is with CT, you have there's a risk of inducing cancer. So there's what we call ionizing radiation. So that's the disadvantage of using CT. So we don't use it in pregnant patients unless if it's really necessary. And then MRI is good in that there's no radiation, but at the same time, it's a magnet. So we worry about people who have metallic objects in them. And then ultrasound, we use it. It's also very quick and fast and in real time. So use it if we want to just find out information that's superficial. So by superficial, I mean organs that are close to the surface. And if we need to know, what's going on right there and there, what should we do? Can we do any procedures that we use MRI? Then angiography is mostly the blood vessels. So if you want to know how the blood vessels are, then we use angiography. And then PET, as I was mentioning, it depends on the metabolism of the pathology. So here is a tumor and it's metabolizing glucose. If you remember the Krebs cycle and the glycolysis pathway, so we utilize that and we trap the glucose in the exokinase pathway, and then then we're able to image it. So you have different tools to answer different questions. So depending on the question that you have, then the imaging type that you use will vary to answer that question.
Perfect, thank you. What advancements have you seen considering the medical and clinical experience for teaching in the past 10 years?
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
Sorry, 1 second. So
Okay.
what advancements have you seen considering the medical and clinical experience or teaching in the past 10 years?
Oh, okay. So medical advances that I've noticed. So there's been a lot of advances, especially with artificial intelligence and machine learning, especially in my field of radiology. There's a move towards how do we make radiologists' lives easier. So there's a topic. Oh, why can't we get a computer to tell us what the pathology is? And maybe we can, but there is a lot of advancement in the way in which we incorporate computer diagnosis and just making our lives easier. Because there's a lot of information that we have, and by utilizing AI and machine learning, we're capable of getting even more information that we can use to help our patients. So I would say, especially just answer the question, it's machine learning and artificial intelligence. Those are the main advances that we are seeing, and therapies too.
Awesome. So we're going to take 2 more questions. So as a radiologist, do you specialize in certain body parts or do you constantly view images from any part of the body?
Yeah. So in our training, we specialize in all kinds of every imaging from head to toe. We from musculars for X-rays. We like literally everything that can be imaged. We specialize in them. So but right now, because I've done with residents, I can get a job and I can read literally anything. So which is great because you're not just tied to one's body part. Whether it's OB-GYN, you can do that. Whatever it is, we're capable of doing it. But then you can subspecialize. So there's some people who just do neuro radiology. All they do is just this part of their head, and they spend 2 years just subspecializing in imaging that. There's also chest imaging, which is just focused on this. And there's also nuclear medicine, which just focuses on that. So you get basic training in everything, and then you transition, and then most people do a fellowship, which is what I'm doing, just to specialize in one body part or one organ system.
Perfect, thank you. And our last question for today, what advice would you give to students who want to shadow medical professionals and do volunteer work but can't go outside due to lockdown restrictions? Would you recommend any other alternatives?
Yeah, so I've heard of virtual shadowing. People have been discussing that. I'm not sure what the plan is right now, but it's something that can be arranged depending on specialty interests. But I'm still trying to figure that part out. I wish I had a slam dunk answer or something that was substantial, but it's really difficult because people are worried that, oh, if you have more people in the patient's room, then there's a high chance of spreading COVID, and so hospitals are a little bit tense about having external people come in if you are not essential. So maybe virtual shadowing can be an option.
Perfect. All right, so that concludes our segment with Dr. Emmanuel today. We will be linking in contact information so that students that may have some follow-ups or would like to stay in touch will be able to do so. And your recording will also be published to our YouTube channel. So if students miss it, they will be able to kind of catch up or, revisit a part that they found was interesting. But first, we would like to say thank you so much for taking the time to come and speak to us. It's very important as an applicant.
Sige sa ako ron kasi ka. So ako ron gira man na classmate namin na kami makapag-chat ka. So kami ako
Sorry, Rehan, if you would be able to mute yourself just for
30 minutes. Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. No worries, no worries. Okay, so once again, thank you so much, Dr. Manuel, for taking the time. I'm sure a lot of international applicants were able to gain some very useful information today because it is kind of rare sometimes to hear from people who have applied from outside the country. So once again, thank you so much for your time. And our students will be filling out a thank you form for your guest speaker segment as well. So we'll be forwarding those responses to you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, everybody.
All right, thank you. Goodbye.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, perfect. So we will be uploading his segment after on, and you guys are more than welcome to fill out that thank you form if you gain something from his session. But for right now, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get started on our debate. So we're going to relink the debate pamphlet in here in case you forget what the first topic was, or if you forget, just what some of the questions are. You can go ahead and open that up. And what we'll be doing right now is we'll be splitting you up into breakout rooms. So once we split you all up into those breakout rooms, in each of those rooms, you'll be able to talk to some kids in your room. You'll also have a leadership team member at MedStem Powered in that room just to facilitate some conversation if things die down, or maybe ask some follow-up questions. But really, for the purpose of today, think of us as flies on the wall. We're only here to help you guys facilitate your discussion, but today is heavily mediated by you all. So you're going to be seeing a little notification pop up soon to join a breakout room. You're going to spend about 10 minutes. Our first topic is palliative care. So you're going to spend about 10 minutes discussing that. And then we're going to bring you all back and we can discuss it as a group. So I'm going to assign the breakout rooms now. And if you haven't been assigned a room, just stick around here and we will make sure